Hey guys, we just recorded our second podcast and we're running 15 minutes behind because we could not figure out the audio for the life of myself.
We figured it out though. We got there.
Yeah, so we can't wait to see what you think about number two, and we'd love your
And
feedback.
what we talk about?
Oh, we talked about a lot. We talked about recent week on Farcaster for us personally and professionally. We talked about channel passes, which led us to moderation, which led us into a very quick detour to Solana, and then we came back to spam. So those are our topics, and we're gonna dive in. Sweet.
Perfect. Your week on
Oh man.
Farcaster.
My week on Farcaster has been insane. I actually got to go to some cool Farcaster people. I had dinner with Variant on Thursday night with a bunch of people. Some were Farcaster OGs like Dylan and Ace. And then there were some new people who were like, oh, Farcaster is interesting. And I think we Farcaster built them. I
Nice.
think we're getting them on the Farcaster build train. And
Nice.
then otherwise, my DCs are completely out of control. I stirred the pot a
Uh-huh.
little bit and then I got the pot stirred. So
Mm-hmm.
here I am. Yeah. How about you?
Yes. Dealing with the Karens of Farcaster. I feel like that's a good channel. Karens of Farcaster.
Okay,
People who
that
are
is
who
a
are
good.
complaining that they're not getting picked for the conference and are indignant.
I also want to hear your week on Farcaster because Hypersub is blowing up, and I think you're doing a great job being an ambassador. But I want to know what you're feeling.
Yeah. Stressed. I feel like everything, like what a founder wants is for people to use their product. That's like the crown jewel. And I think it's really hard. It's hard to get people to notice you and to care about you and to use what you built. So seeing people use it and share it is exciting. It's inspiring. And I'm trying to, capitalize on it. It's almost like surfing. There's a wave, you catch the wave, and then you need to ride the wave. You have to put in effort to stay on the wave. Just because you caught it doesn't mean that you're going to get to ride it all the way through. And so I feel like, every day I wake up and I'm just like trying to do everything I can to keep the energy alive, keep people psyched, keep people interested. And it's a tough balance to do that and to build, like to
Yeah.
build new features because we're trying to ship every week, every Friday. That we were like really inspired by the Workcast
Oh,
team.
you're doing Farcaster Fridays.
Yeah, actually, I had a funny meme yesterday. I was like, we actually shipped our shit before Warpcast, and I don't think they announced anything yesterday. Dan said something really interesting about this, where he said last year was about 0 to 1, and so the pace. Because someone had asked him about the iteration speed. They're like, "How are you guys shipping so fast?" He's like, "Well, last year was 0 to 1. We had to build the protocol. We had to get it permissionless, and now that that's done, a lot of the work that we're doing is just like iterating at the client level. And I think that was like very clarifying for me because we were kind of in the similar space. Like last year was very much about the idea maze, ideation, iteration, figuring out like what is the thing. And like building, it's a big risk to build a protocol first. We took that risk, we built our protocol, and this now it's all about like, okay, getting people to use it and then also building on top of the usage that exists. And so most of the iteration is happening in the client. So we can move a lot faster. But it's like balancing that with like customer support, marketing, promotion stuff. It's just a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not complaining. This is the job. It's what I signed up for. So I'm very happy. But yeah, it's like it's exhilarating.
I'm personally stoked as your friend
Thank you.
and as a supporter and as a user. If you think about it, FarCon initially used your first product,
Mm-hmm.
CrowdFi, right? And now
Mm-hmm.
more and more and more and more people are using CrowdFi truly just to spin something up and get something going. I think the ease of use is brilliant. And then obviously I love Hypersub. Shout out to all my Club TED members. I actually, because of Hypersub, and this is another shout out to Matthew, I can create Club TED gated events on Eventcaster. And I'm just trusting the smart contracts to know that these are all Club TED members who will show up and only Club TED members get the details. So I, as a user, am super stoked because from the 0 to 1 part that everyone was working on last year, I'm kind of reaping the fruits of all of those labors. As a user who's trying to use everything in an
Yeah.
interoperable manner, it's just like chef's kiss to me, from token gated frames to token gated events to token gated group
Group
chats to
chats.
even creating a token gate membership in the first place is pretty dope. So thank you for all
Yeah.
that you do.
Oh, thank you for using it. I mean, it's like you've been pushing the boundary in all these different ways, and it's like you are confirming the thesis. I mean, a lot of people have asked us like, "Oh, why don't you guys use, an MPC wallet provider?" And it's like, well, because they're domain specific and you don't get the interoperability. And that's another kind of big conviction oriented risk that we've taken. And so it's awesome to see it paying off because the things that you're doing are like, and we didn't ask you to do this, you're just doing it, and so
Yeah.
it's like you're actually leveraging the advantages of crypto. It's like Hypersub doesn't support events, we don't support group chats, we don't support frames yet, And yet you're able to do all these things because it's public. The credential is public. The subscription data is public. So you get this, we're seeing the interoperability emerge kind of spontaneously. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time. I think we're still super early. Everybody has like a ton of work to do. It all still feels a little kludgy, but we're getting there. It's only going to get better.
Totally agree. If I tried to do this in Web 2, I would have to pay so many things. I'd have to pay for X service, Y service, Z service. I mean, everyone is actually taking a protocol fee at some point, right? Like Hypersub gets a certain fee. And so I don't think about having to pay up front for anything. And it's brilliant as somebody who is like innovating with creation and innovating as a creator, I would say, just for the whole purpose of innovation, not because that's my career path. It makes it so much more cost effective and accessible this way. Shall we dive into
let's
our
get into it.
farcaster topics?
Yes.
Cool. So for everyone to know, we did not plan anything. We did not prepare intensely for this. It is still very, very off the cuff. But Johnny and I were both like, what 3 topics do we want to talk about? And immediately we send them to each other at the same time. And they're the exact same
It's the same
topic.
list.
So
that's good.
What are they?
Yeah. So what do we have on our list? We have channel passes, Solana, spam, and moderation. Those are the 4 things that we both were like, let's talk about this. So should we go down the list? Should we talk about channel passes? Okay.
I'll just read Varun's cast. New experiment. This is a brand new experiment. It's a channel pass. Host can require a pass to cast in channel. A user pays, as Johnny said, 100 warps to be able to cast. That is equivalent of $1. You only have to pay it up front. That's it. If a user ignores the norms of the channel, the pass can be revoked, and etc. You get kicked out, or you don't get kicked out. You're still able to look at the channel. You just can't cast in the channel. And the whole goal of this is to reduce spam in more popular channels. And so hosts of popular channels are able to opt into these features that request a purchase of a pass. Their idea is that if passes are a useful mechanism to reduce spam, they can very easily move that on chain and decentralize it so that it's available to all farcaster clients. And that, I think, is the quick TLDR.
That's the quick TLDR. I guess my first thought is, it's easy to think through the different permutations of this. The requirements could be paying warps and holding a token. It could be paying a different amount of warps. It could be a sliding scale on what you pay based on, say, the degrees of your like activity. So there's like, I don't know, 5 or 6 things that you need to have achieved, I guess, before you get the active badge. So you could imagine like it's 100 warps, 80, 60, 40, 20, 0. So there's all different permutations here. The thing that I've kind of observed, I don't know if they enabled it on memes yesterday. I think they might have. And I realized that the volume was a lot lower. And observation I mentioned this to them. I was like, I kind of want to know what the conversion rates are on that, because it feels like it's going to be a Goldilocks zone where if you have no barrier to entry at all, then you're going to see a lot of spam. But if you make the barrier to entry too high, then you're actually cutting into what might otherwise be really good users, casting really good memes or whatever your channel is doing. So I think in order to find the Goldilocks zone, you need to iterate. And in order to iterate, you need to see how is it performing. And I suspect that different channels will have different Goldilocks zones. Like some might be really high, some might be kind of lower. So the channel host is the kind of like owner of the channel, I think should have visibility into that. That being said, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't realize that you don't get that data. I haven't turned it on for anything, but I would think that is like crucial. Like I think we even discussed it last time before they launched it. I'm thinking back to our last podcast. I was like, I would charge $1 for people to be able to be in Club Ted's, like the channel, or Ted the channel. And it was okay if I would have a drop off, but at least I would know who was dropping off and who wasn't. So the whole point of me doing that was because I wanted to know the conversion rate. And I didn't realize that you're not getting that. I mean, it's probably easy for them to be able to give you that. And I hope they do. But okay, interesting.
Yeah, and I think it'd also be cool to be able to play with that number. Like on certain days, you could say, oh, we're going to do a discount or whatever. Or you can gift to your friend, or there's all kinds of stuff that you can play with. I'm not convinced that it should be at the protocol level. I feel like token gating just gives you this. Like for example, if you were going to implement the protocol, you're not going to do it with warps because warps aren't on chain. So you do it with some other thing that is on chain, which is either going to be an ERC20 token or a 721 NFT. Like it's going to be one of those things. So
yeah,
my like reading the tea leaves here would be that they're doing this with warps just to dip their toe in the space of should channels have some kind of gate to them. And I think if they find that it works and it's useful in reducing spam, then I can imagine they'll like kind of open up the standard by which that is done. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I agree. sometimes when we're like, oh, it's a gated channel, immediately my mental model is always NFT gated X, Y, or Z.
Hmm.
But Warps is just like a dollar gate and you pay it once and that's it. And to me, that makes a lot more sense. Like I think I'm averse because I'm like, oh, there's a lot of channels that I think you should be able to look at. Almost I think like token gated channels for a specific purpose are very different than pay $1 to be able to post channel. And again, I think to be clear, you only have to pay the dollar, the 100 warps, whatever the first time. You don't have to continue paying it. You get it once and then you can go free. Only because I think there's a lot of benefit in viewing certain
Yep.
channels, even if you're not part of it. Whereas I think otherwise it's just a group chat. In my sense. So I agree. And then there's also this really interesting kind of hypothesis of these idea of like low fences, of
Mhm.
that if you put low fences somewhere where there's no fence, it completely changes the way somebody behaves. So for
Yep.
instance, if you put like a small 2 foot fence on the edge of a bridge, I think it was found to reduce different suicide attempts by 50% or 60%. If you put a small, literally a tiny picket fence against a grass lawn, people are less likely to step over that fence, even though it's 6 inches tall. And so I do think from a human behavior perspective, it's really good to see. And then it just becomes figuring out how tall or how low are you going to put that fence. I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, especially for
Yeah.
large popular channels where you end up getting a lot of exposure if you are new. Actually, now that we're thinking about it, I'm like, it could encourage people to go to the smaller channels to start casting if they don't have to pay the warps. And that ultimately is bringing liquidity, like bringing people and conversation and new connections to smaller channels, which only benefits the community and the person and the protocol. So
Yeah,
brilliant.
I
I think it's a
agree.
brilliant move.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, you could also argue that this already exists now with, I mean, you have to pay to use Farcaster or Warpcast.
Well,
Like, so
not
there
all the
already
new people right
is.
now.
Oh, really? Is that
I
not a,
think it's free still.
oh,
When
I thought
frames
they had to pay.
happen, you do have to pay. I pay, you pay. But when frames happened, they made it free to sign up. They just waived the
Oh,
fee just so
okay.
that
Okay.
to
Got it.
remove the friction point.
Got it. Okay. Because I remember you had to pay like $3 or something, and then they bumped it to five, and they maybe it went higher. I can't remember, but there was like
Oh, I'm
it.
paying. Yeah, you're
Okay,
paying.
I
New
I didn't
people
know
not
I'm
paying.
paying. Okay, uh, is itself a form of barrier to entry, and I think like they were playing with that number because they're like, oh, maybe it's not high enough because it's not disincentivizing enough to like spam campaigns. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean this is an old problem. This is a problem in email for many years, and like email still kind of figured it out, but still you get spam. Like this is just I think a cat and mouse game that'll like never go away. But what I like is
Yeah.
that different channels can iterate on different strategies and then benefit from what they see working with others. I think Dan had mentioned this too. He's like, freedom of speech, not freedom of reach. And
Yeah.
big channels with big followings are distribution. Like memes just got 100,000 followers this week.
Hell
Base,
yeah.
yeah, I know. Base, I think maybe I don't know. It's probably got a top five at least. I'd say Base has that. Probably Ethereum, Farcaster. There's a handful that do. So it's powerful if you are a smaller account and you cast a banger. Like it could, you could get a lot more in distribution than you would if channels didn't exist. But like to your point, what I also like is that someone might say, well, fuck this. I'm not going to spend money to cast into this thing. I'm going to go make my own thing. Go make your own thing. Good. Do it. Like you have the option. So I think that's it's cool that that's just like baked into Warpcast now by default. But yeah, I'm curious to see how it evolves and like what it ends up looking like when it's on chain.
It also makes me think about channel like freedom of speech, not freedom of reach. And we could kind of go into the moderation path too.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah, let's
horse
talk
can
about
grow.
moderation. I'm curious to
Okay.
hear your thoughts on
I
this.
will stir the pot a little. I
Yeah.
had people send me a couple things that their casts have been removed by or warned and hidden by somebody. And when I used to warn and hide a cast, I'd send them a message and just be like, hey, FYI, I'm doing this because it doesn't fit this. You should post it in this channel instead. And I always wanted people to know, I just want people to know like why I'm hiding it. I don't want it to seem like I'm censoring them. And also this kind of like a little more context is last week I casted in the Farcaster channel being like, who is doing moderation here? You get AC minus.
Right.
And I
Right. I
feel
saw
comfortable
that.
saying that. I'm not trying to cast shade. All the people there are like Farcaster OGs. We know each other. We can give each other constructive feedback. That was a little bit more of a spicy take, but it worked. And so I was like, no one's moderating here. So what happened is that Colin Johnson, one of the co-founders of Ponder, which was doing a lot of the AMA kind of like poll questions before Frames existed, and now they're doing it as Frames and is self-serve. Then we find out this morning that Colin posts, hey, we're permissionless. And all of a sudden it gets hidden in the Farcaster channel, which is the largest channel, one of the largest channels, and where a lot of people go for distribution, especially builders. And it's gone. We're all in this group chat and I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, I don't know why no one told me. Like, and so I classic just go into the Farcaster channel and I'm like, hi, why did you remove this post? Can you give us an explanation? And it just a little stir in the pot. But you need to know because everyone is talking about it. And I think we need to normalize the behavior of like, okay, if you are getting censored or you think that something was done wrong, you need to ask, like, in a very kind and constructive manner, like, was it an accident? Is it intentional? Did the new norms change? And so the best part about the Colin story, by the way, guys, is that Varun actually hid the cast. and then Varun came out, obviously he's busy building, and was like, hey, here are the reasons that I did it. You're right, we did flip the switch on overnight, and I should have probably made an announcement about it. So here's the announcement. I'm really sorry, Colin. And everyone is happy and good, and we're going to figure out another channel. But it does make me think a lot about moderation because as you know, as I know, being a channel host is annoying when you have a popular feed because you're just hiding stuff all the
garbage.
time.
Yeah.
How do you think about the balance between having something that's super helpful and then also knowing that you might piss some people off?
I think I've done a 180 on this. Like my instinct was early on, like right soon after they did the channel host experiment, I said, Dan, it should really be clear what I'm hiding so other people can see it. And like maybe we should have some system where if enough people like whatever downvote my decision to hide, then it becomes unhidden. It goes back in the feed. And he was like, I don't think that's a good idea. Like, I think what's actually going to happen is people are going to just get pissed at you, and it's going to become even more work, and you're going to be even less incentivized to do this. And I was like, no, I don't think that's right at all. And then like a week or two went by, and I was like, you were 100% right, and I was 100% wrong. Like this should not at all be like public, or at least I don't want it to be public because this is not some new insight. I mean, people have been saying this for many, many years about like moderation on the internet, which is that if a place becomes shitty, no one wants to hang out there. Period. End of story. Like you can philosophize on, democratic access and transparency and all this bullshit, but at the end of the day, if it's not a fun place to be, people will leave. And so I think that like doing that in an automated way, I think is very, very difficult. And I think like, I think we talked about this maybe last week or I don't know, at some point where like companies are reflections of the founder, period. Mm-hmm. And like they are imbued with the values and the beliefs of the founder. And there's nothing you can do or say to make that not true. It's just like a fundamental truth, whether you want it or not. And I think like there's an analogy to be made there, which is like channels are like proto companies, they're proto communities. Like they are the nucleus of something and they are, they have a creator. And I think that the moderation should be a reflection of the values of that creator, like period. Like Brian, I think in Bad Takes was like, I will never moderate this channel because I'm not like that. And it's like, cool, good. Like, that's great. Like that's his approach. If it hasn't already, it soon will turn into a tire fire and people will leave, but that's fine. Like, or not, or maybe not, or maybe it'll just like, it'll self-police in some way. But I think you have to have moderation. And I think that if it's too transparent, I think that the moderator is going to get a lot of hate and not want to moderate. So I don't know. I think maybe it's an option that moderators could be like, sure. I mean, I've thought about this before. Like actually, if people said, if it was visible, I would just say like, fuck you. If you don't like it, go start your own channel. I don't really care. But that gets old. It's like exhausting to tell people to fuck off all the time. Exactly.
Yeah.
So if it was an option, I would keep it private. And the thing that the proof is in the pudding, like, is the channel growing? Are people engaging? Are there bangers? If all that's true, then it's working,
I 100% agree on the transparency aspect. It's hard. It almost becomes more work rather than less work. And then when you aren't having as much fun doing it, you're not going to be doing your best work, period. Yeah. It's not that necessarily like the transparency that concerns me. It's a limited accountability that concerns me. Is that, and I've experienced this on TikTok, I've experienced this elsewhere, people will just report or hide without rhyme or reason. And so I don't necessarily think that you should be showing how many casts are people hiding or which casts are people hiding, but a relative number. If all of a sudden somebody looks at my data and says, oh, Ted is hiding 90% of casts in Ted, there's almost two options. A, TED is just getting like TED, the channel is just getting inundated with spam, and
Right.
90% of those casts are actually spam. On the other hand, it could just be, oh no, I am like a total dictator and only want my cast in there, and I'm hiding any other casts that go there. And I think it's important to at least be cognizant of the metrics in terms of hiding, because if it is too much spam, that is a issue that we should be focused on and figure out, okay, why are all of these people spamming this smaller channel? I don't think it really matters as a mod issue, because then people will be like, oh, it's a dictated channel and I don't even want to post here anyways. Or on the other hand, I'm like very antitrust. So I'm just like, I don't want it to like start as like benevolent dictator and then turn into like angry dictator. So I
Yeah.
think there's something to say about the accountability. And then also I think the reason that irked me about the whole call-in and ponder post was that it felt very subjective in terms of enforcement. And it makes more sense now that Varun was like, oh no, we've released channel passes, so we're turning it on and being a little bit more strict about everything. But it's the subjectivity and then the accountability.
I wonder if the whole concept of channel host is just inherently like dictatorial. Like you're a dictator, whether you like it or not. You can be benevolent, you could be angry, you could be unfair, fair, whatever. But like at the end of the day, like the channel host is the owner of the channel, and what they decide goes. Like
Yeah.
so
I don't know.
now,
I just laugh. I'm like, could there be a coup? Could you just like call a mutiny and kick a channel host out if like most of the users are like, what's going on? Not this is just more again,
that's
I think we've
interesting.
talked about this, is that channels ultimately are communities. They are a
Yeah.
community within a larger society. And we could even call it a society. They will have their own currency, as we saw with DGen. They will have
Mm-hmm.
their own rules. They will have their own norms. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's really fun to think about them as just like, oh, Reddit or Twitter or these little tiny like forums. But at the end of the day, we're building an economy on this. That's what crypto
Yeah.
uniquely enables, in addition to other stuff. And so I kind of like take a step back and I'm like, oh, what does this look like at a like larger societal level? So even when you're talking about, oh, if a channel is shitty, like no one wants to go hang out there, you feel the same exact way about a city.
Totally.
Like imagine like bad takes could purely be San Francisco and like
Yeah.
everyone leaves.
Yeah.
And so anyways, that's kind of why I think more about, oh, okay, these like, but agree, again, like is a benevolent dictator bad? This kind of gets into like way different, like more
Mm-hmm.
hypothetical, like philosophical,
Yeah.
kind of like political theory stuff that we do not need to get into right now. Also, because my coffee's still hitting. But it's just really fascinating if you think about channels with that future in mind.
Yeah, I think it's like this dimension of governance. So that we talked a lot about channel economics. Is it free? Is it gated on some ERC or NFT? Does it require recurring payments, one-time payments? Do you have to pay to cast? Do you have to pay to read? Like, there's a
It's
whole
an
design space.
HOA.
Yeah. So there's
It's
this
an
whole design
HOA.
space for the economy of a channel, but we haven't like really talked about like the governance of a channel. I think partly because I'm just like, anytime I hear the word like governance, especially in crypto, my brain turns off, and I'm just like, no, stop talking to me, get away from me. Yeah,
Yeah, like I
but
break out in hives.
yeah. So I think like that that's still though that's an interesting dimension. It's an interesting design space to think like, yeah, maybe you have like a senate or like a republic or a democracy or a dictatorship. Like
Democracy.
you can play around with all of these different governance models. That's cool. Yeah, I
Oh
mean,
god.
I'm
Yeah.
not particularly interested in that, but I know
No,
that
me
there are
neither.
people out there who would be like super into exploring like governance models for channels. So yeah, this to me is what makes channels so exciting. Is they're just like it's a way of both scaling and preserving like the smallness of what makes uh, internet community special. So I think yeah, it's exciting. It's an exciting time, and we're very
Yeah.
very early in it. All right, what else? What else do we have on our list?
We had Solana, which, guys, full disclosure, I own Solana. I have a Solana wallet. I have not set up my Solana address, connected address, and I don't know how exciting this actually is, if it is that exciting, because to me, I'm like, oh, we're just adding another chain or adding another network to the ecosystem, which is great. It's not just Ethereum now, meaning more people can build stuff and like once you have frames and a bunch of other stuff. But am I missing something? Like that's all it is, right? Like there's no like woo revelatory thing. It's just like okay, are Solana compatible.
To be totally fair, like I'm just being honest, like I have no idea. I saw the
Okay.
announcement and I was like, I don't know. I don't like it. It like didn't. I was like blank face. Like it didn't register. I was like, I guess that's good. You know, it seems good. I don't know anything about Solana. I'm not in that world at
Okay.
all. And so, I mean, I've played around in. You know, I've like tried to buy a name and some NFTs and stuff, but like I don't know what is special about it. I mean, I haven't looked. We should probably look at the Dune dashboard and see if it resulted in any kind of uptick in growth.
Yeah, why don't you pull
Uh,
that up or take a look at that? And then
yeah.
I
Okay.
think too, I think it's net positive for Warpcast and for the protocol because now the Solana maxis who were very who didn't like the Ethereum maxi, right? So it's Vitalik, it's
Hmm.
everyone else on here that we're chatting to. They'll be more, I would say, now they don't have to dig their heels in the ground and say, oh, we're not going to join until you support Solana. They now can create a community on Farcaster the same way that they have a community on crypto Twitter, whereas that
Mm.
wasn't necessarily available before. So that's my 2 cents on how it's a net positive. The other thing I'll say is I did get into it. It wasn't an argument. It was just a spirited discussion with somebody who was like, oh, Barcaster should have built on Solana in the first place. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so expensive when you first started, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, well, you're building a social media, like this is or a social network. You're building a social network in which everybody is checking at all times of the day, no matter what. And you can't build it on a network that had such unpredictable downtime that Solana did over like since 2020. Right. And so I only think Solana more recently became more predictable, didn't have these random blackouts. But imagine if you built your protocol on such an unreliable network. Basically, the trade off was between reliability versus cost. And
Hmm.
so I think they made the right decision starting on Ethereum and then now integrating Solana. But again, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't know how big of a deal it was. And I guess
I
you
still
don't either.
don't. Yeah, I still don't know. We should learn. We
um,
should do some homework and learn more about Solana.
we should learn. Okay. Now a new hot take is spam. I think that was our third topic was spam.
Yes, we talked about moderation.
I kind of have two thoughts here. There's good actors, there's bad actors, there's kind of like naive actors, right? So perhaps a lot of the people doing some of the spam is just doing the spam because they don't know how to speak English or don't know how to participate in a predominantly English place. Perhaps they're looking to get X, Y, and Z. And then there's people who, do have good followings and are also engaging in like engagement farming, which I would consider like spammy behavior, or at least like instigating and stimulating and encouraging spammy behavior. And that's kind of the realm of spam that I've been thinking about. We can start anywhere. You can add a completely new place and pivot us that way. So just
Yeah. Okay.
like my
I
thought.
like that. I like that as like the lay of the land. I think the former is less interesting because it's. I see it too. It's just like one word responses. I'm like, I don't know if this is a bot or a person. It's not that interesting
Yeah.
or relevant. It's just kind of annoying. And I think that the second category, or actually, there's a third category that I'll just mention. I also don't think it's that interesting, but I see it a lot, especially on memes, which is someone will post like 15 very mid memes to the feed all at once, like within 5 minutes. And I'm like, dude, I know you're a person and you've posted decent memes before. Like, this is spam. Like, you're spamming the
Yeah.
channel. You know, it's so annoying. That's
Like
like
you
another
wouldn't do that in a
category.
group chat. Like you wouldn't,
Yeah,
as people were responding, you wouldn't just go like rapid fire in a group chat.
rapid fire. Like, it's just like a dump. And it's just like, not, it's just pace yourself, dog. Like, just take a beat. So I don't know if other channels see that, but like that's kind of annoying. It's like a category of spam. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think I'm curious to hear your thoughts more on the engagement farming kind of bad practice, what you're calling spam. I don't know that I'd call it spam, but I know what you mean. Like it's kind of,
It's not spam, but it results in spam. Like
yeah,
it's like not, it's like a cause and effect. Like the cause itself isn't spam, the effect is spam. And to me, that I try not to do that. Sometimes I've done it, but I usually try to do it in a way where I'm trying to think.
yeah. Like what's an
And
example of
okay,
a
let me give you
cast
an
that would
example.
do that?
So the best example might be Alex Kwan, who I admire, so respect. He's been building in public, pivoted, so transparent about his founder process. And they've really nailed something that I think is highly valuable. And I think it just comes down to implementation of it. And so it is this social betting idea.
Yeah,
Obviously, people like to bet. You think about when you go out to a bar, you'll be like, oh, well, you do this or that. And like everyone kind of makes these bets. And they brought it onto chain and they're able to reward people. And so there's two behaviors that it's encouraged is A, like you have these high profile figures getting involved, which excites everyone. And that's like genuine people. Like everyone loves to see, oh, shoot, Brian Armstrong is like here casting. Is he going to do more or less? So it makes it fun. It's a spectacle. It's like when you go to a show or when you go to any sort of sporting event, when you have skin in the game, like you're more excited about it. I love sports. I don't particularly find baseball that exciting to watch. And so I always have to make bets if I go to baseball in order to pay attention to the game. So that's one thing. It gets people engaged and involved. On the other hand, you see people who want their way happening, just quote tweeting the thing over and over and over again to get other people to bet so that there's more points to distribute. And so kind of the first examples I show, I think are huge net positives for the protocol. But a lot of the second stuff, especially when you're somebody who is involved in it, is annoying as F.
Yeah.
Another example of this is far castles. As a user, super fun. I think everyone was like, oh, this is so exciting. It's like an interactive game. But because it's not in a frame, like Yoink is really interesting. I guess like thinking back, it goes back to user design, is that Yoink is really interesting because you're only engaging in this frame. So you're
Like
not
it's
creating
like the
tons
game
of
is
spam.
contained within the frame as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like going
Or
outside
castles.
into the feed. Yeah. In the form of
Yes.
cast. Yeah.
So that's another example. So like you have a person and like these are two project examples. And then of course you have people examples where, I think if you have a ton of airdrop farmers, like the more you cast about airdrop farming, the more engagement it gets. But for me, that feels like don't like it's good for your account, it's good for engagement, but it doesn't make anyone else like everyone else here sees through it. So anyways, those are
Yeah.
those are a couple examples. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've seen that too, and I agree. It can get annoying. I mean, I think this is again where like channels come in because what you want is a boundary around it. And I think this week there was some update where they're like cast inside this channel will not show up outside the channel. And I think
Castles.
yeah, and I feel like that's the answer. It's like like think about it as this like successive series of boundaries where it's like the most narrow, the smallest boundary would be the frame. Like nothing leaves the frame. Very tightly scoped boundary. The next boundary out would be the channel, and then the boundary outside of that would be your feed. And I think
Yes.
like if something's out in the feed, I think it shouldn't be like game logic, game mechanics, game interactions. Like that should be in frame or should be in a channel. The feed
I
is for
agree.
like getting. It's also like another mental model would be like breadth and depth. It's like the feed is for breadth. You kind of want to get a sense of like what is happening on the network. What are people doing? What are people excited about? You want to see everything. You want to see, like NFTs. You want to see, game stuff. You kind of want to get everything. And then the channel, you can kind of go deeper. And then a frame, you're like going really deep. I think
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, but I think like it doesn't bother me if if the blast zone is kind of established as being the channel. If it's in the main feed, it's like, okay, that's annoying because it's just noise. It's just super noisy. It's cool that other people are psyched on it and doing it. But if it's not your thing, it's like, oh, I don't want to unfollow. That
Yeah.
sucks. But I also like don't want this to just dominate my feed. So I don't know. I think of it more as like I think you're right. It's there are like engagement farming tactics that people are employing, but like I also think that it's kind of a feed issue at
I
the end of the
agree.
day.
Yeah,
Like
and I'm not saying
yeah,
like people can do that. I think what irritates me right now is when like I don't want to see it. Like I have a lot of
yeah,
girlfriends that I absolutely adore and love and they are insufferable with Instagram stories. Like insufferable. And I love them
yeah,
and I tell them that and I'm like I am muting you even though I love you and we hang out all the time because it's annoying.
yeah,
And like
yeah.
I love that you can do that on Instagram and be like we're still friends. You can still send me messages. We can do
Right.
everything. Like I just don't want to get your 100 stories when I'm going into Instagram or like your posts.
Yeah.
And that's been totally fine. And I just don't think that feature exists yet. It's like, it's different because you have to think about it from a user perspective. I do think opting into whether a channel, like I do love the idea of, hey, there are some channels here. And of course, the Warpcast team is doing it right now, but that you can opt to never seeing. Like you can
Yeah.
just say,
I
I
like
don't care
that.
about this at all, and I never want to see it, even
Yep.
if people I adore are posting in it. And I think this also actually now that I'm like have this epiphany moment where I'm like, oh wow, this is actually amazing because now with channel passes and the mods and
Yep.
everything, I'm like, oh, we're probably going to start. It's like all the pieces are kind of fitting together. And again, the behavior that I don't like and the behavior that like others like, now that we're increasing very in a very sophisticated, like almost simple manner, though it's like sophisticated but simple with the passes, you can see that all of this will be discouraged and that there will be a solution for everything.
Mm.
We're just not there yet. And so I'm okay. I do think that's where we're headed. It's just a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, I
And they
agree.
have other priorities.
I agree.
Yeah.
I have one more thing I want to ask you about, which is, did you see in the Skin in the Game channel with Nick and Mike from One Confirmation, they said we're going to spin up a multisig
Yes.
and we're going to
I
add.
casted about this.
Yeah,
High
I thought that
signal
was
channel. I
so.
literally,
Yeah. So, huh?
it's
What'd
like
you say?
I said, the way that I was thinking about it, and I'd love to hear what you were saying, was that it's such a brilliant, innovative way to financially incentivize behavior around a community, a channel's values, because they're not receiving money now. It's not like, oh, I'm going to give you degen tips, or, oh, I'm going to give you warps. You aren't receiving money. You are allowed to control the money, which I
Mm.
think is a completely different realm that we haven't discussed, that we haven't seen
Yeah.
before.
So I have this, there's this sort of thought experiment that I proposed on Farcaster a long time ago, which was take a group of, take a small group. Let's say it's me and you, and I share a seed phrase with you with a wallet. So let's say we have $100 in a wallet. I
Mm-hmm.
create a wallet. I have the seed phrase. There's $100 in it. I trust you. I give you the seed phrase. So now we both have the seed phrase to the same wallet with $100. I would be confident that you're not going to drain the wallet.
Yeah.
Then let's say that we add a third person that we both trust, you know, and maybe I don't know them, but you do, or vice versa. I
Okay.
also would be confident that the wallet won't be drained. The question is, how many people can you continue adding until the wallet is drained? Now, every single person that you add, so like, I trust this person. Like, I really trust Ted. I don't think she's going to drain the wallet. And we
Yeah.
add someone else. You're like, I really trust. And every single person who has the seed phrase is not giving it to somebody. They're only giving it to someone who they have an enormous amount of trust in. And so you just keep playing this game, keep playing again. So it's like, how big can the number get until the wallet gets drained? And the same. So in this experiment that they're doing, it caused me to ask the same question, which is like, well, all you need is a majority of signers to drain the wallet. So I'm like, it's not going to happen with a third signer, that's for sure. Is
No.
it going to happen with a fourth or a fifth? Like, at what point, how big can the multisig get until some cohort decides, oh, well, why don't we can form a majority and then just drain this thing? I think
Yeah.
the number might be actually like much bigger than we would guess.
Really?
I think so.
I agree with you, and I want to play that out, and I would 100% play that out. But what's interesting about them doing it isn't, it's not based on like who you know or who you trust. It's, they're saying based on the quality of contributions to this
Mm-hmm.
channel.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
So
it's very clever.
I
And they're also saying, by like, that's the decision that we're going to make by fiat. Like, it's subjective. It's not who casts more, who gets the most likes. It's just like qualitatively who we feel is making the biggest contribution.
yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I want to see how it plays out. I'd actually love. I think, are they adding it? Let me check. Are they adding him per week, or are they each month?
It's a month.
Okay,
Yeah.
so setting a reminder in 6 months to ask them how it's going.
Yeah. I would
It's a
give it like,
long play.
if it depends, you know what, another interesting part of the question is like, how much money's in the multisig? You know, if there's $100,
I mean, it's
it
Nick.
doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So if it's got $50,000 or 100,000, like, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an interesting game, because it's like, now there's like incentives to try to get on the multisig, try to get other people on the multisig. You know, it's like a capture the flag game, but the flag is like a pot of money.
Yeah.
It's
So I'm
cool. I don't
excited.
know.
I'm excited to
Yeah.
see that. Okay. I have to probably run to go. This is my life now. It's like Farcaster
Yeah.
dinner on Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
Farcaster meetup yesterday. Oh, another Farcaster book club today.
Farcaster podcast, Farcaster
Yeah.
conference planning. Yeah. DMs on Farcaster, casting on
Oh
Farcaster.
my gosh. DMs on
Yeah.
Farcaster.
Farcaster is eating the world.